Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla. This is Arrie, and we are glad you're here with us. We're going to talk about some mental health related issues and hopefully do some work around ending the stigma surrounding them. So, something that's really interesting in the world of mental health is the idea of generational trauma. Um, so, you want to talk a little bit about, what that is and how you view that?
Sure. Which generation trauma, they have so many different names to it. Like I think I've started to see more of the transgenerational trauma, but basically it's where like me as a mother, the trauma that I experience and how it starts to show up in my life, then now it's passed down to my son, and then from my son it can be passed down to his children, and just kind of goes. So it's but negative behavior patterns, just different things that get passed down. I know a lot of the research that's out there stems around the Holocaust and the people, the survivors of the Holocaust, then their children, and then their grandchildren, how it affected each generation being
Right.
passed down.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I know as children, we look up to the adults around us and we model their behavior, right? So if we always see mom or dad being extremely anxious, right, and afraid to be out in the world, let's say, right,
Hmm.
then we're also going to, or the tendency is going to be greater to model that behavior, even if we don't fully understand why,
Right.
right? And so maybe the reason why mom's afraid to go out into the world is because she had some horrible trauma that hasn't been dealt with, but the child doesn't know that, and so this kind of cycle perpetuates. Um, I guess the real trick is how do you break that cycle, right? Like
Right. Right.
how do you get in there to help break that cycle when it's so firmly
Right.
planted in their beings.
Right, because I definitely believe like trauma is passed down to a cell on a cellular level, and it's one starting to first recognize it, and then start to do things to change it so that you can help the next generation. Like the example you gave of like the anxiety, like I think like culturally, I feel like just an effort, like if we go back to slavery, things that we did in the African American community as slaves were like it's very rigid. It's like you better pay attention, you better do this, but it was for our safety so
Yes,
that like we wouldn't, be beaten by the master. Just like all these different things, it was for safety, certain things. But
to
now,
stay alive,
right.
right? Yeah.
And so now it's like you come down now and you still have very authoritarian parents where it's like don't say nothing, don't do nothing. What I say go in any of that. Um might not it's not as beneficial as it was then because what we needed to survive then is not what we need to survive now. And like you see that shift and that change where it's like parents are being more, caring, talking to their children, like letting children have more of a say in what's happening. Not that they don't respect what the parent is saying, but
Right,
at
there's still
least being,
rules, right? Yeah.
but still having more of those conversations instead of like, and an explanation too, instead of like, I told you to do this, don't question me. It's the thing, it's like, I'm telling you to do this, but I'm telling you for this. So it's that understanding behind it. Um,
There's a greater awareness of emotions and then emotional intelligence showing up more often, right? I'm
right,
not saying as a society we're perfect at it or even good at it, but you're hearing more and more conversations where people are willing to even say, well, I feel sad today or I'm happy
right,
today, and being
right,
okay with expressing that,
right,
right? So that's a start. It's a little
right.
crack in the door.
Right. And the thing was, it wasn't the authoritarian style from before because we wanted to disregard that. It was just like this is gonna keep you safe and now you're gonna stay alive. My job is to keep you alive at this point. So I'm gonna do whatever it takes to keep you alive. I don't care about your feelings at this point because you can't have feelings when you're dead
Right.
or whatever else the case, extreme case may be. So it's like survival. Same thing with the Holocaust. Certain things and behavior patterns that was shaped was because of survival. Like this is what we got to do to survive. Like I want you to be alive, so they in that moment for survival, it wasn't thinking about what's 10 years or 13 generations going to look like. It was
Well, in
about
that
how
moment,
how do we
10
even
years or
make it.
13 years
Right.
wasn't even a reality. 13 minutes might have seemed so far
Right.
away, right? Yeah.
Right. And so certain behavior patterns continue to be passed down, and it's like it doesn't work for the person of where you are now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that anything was wrong because I feel like you should always honor everything of the past. because
Yeah.
it was there and it survived a certain it was there and used for a certain reason, but it's like that season is different from this season. How do we need to survive or, live in this season? So I think that's what's important, but it's like we also have to break some of those chains of things that's been passed down and realize like we are in a new season and we don't have to survive in the same way. It's still
Right.
a survival in this. I definitely think we're in just as a minority, I think we have a season
There's
that we're surviving here,
there
but
still are some things.
the
Yeah.
tools are different that we need now.
Right. Yeah. There still are some things that need to be particular ways in order to not uh, perhaps further complicate situations or potentially lose your life. So, I mean, and that's a very real reality, unfortunately. But yeah, it can show up in many different ways. Um, it's interesting because as much as honoring the past, right? It's got to be very interesting to figure out how do I honor the past, honor the people who my elders, right?
Hmm.
And then know that I want something more, right? Or I want something different. I want to change up how I access whatever it is that's going on, right?
Right.
And I can't help but think that that has got to be a pretty difficult place to be because, right? If I choose to do different, then am I going to be perceived as being disrespectful,
Right.
or or or, or something else, right? Like,
Right.
right,
And some stuff like I said with the behavioral patterns being passed down, like they're subconscious. So until something happens to be like, oh, wait a maybe that wasn't the best way, or maybe this is like I keep doing this, but I'm not getting the results that I'm looking for.
right, yeah. And so, I think the biggest thing is to be able to kind of balance out this respect for the past, honoring what people have gone through before you, but also being brave and courageous enough to say, um, I need a different kind of help, right?
Right, right. And getting the healing. Ultimately, it's all about getting the healing
Right,
because like some things can happen and then you might see it show up in different and it shows up differently. So you might have like one person was like very restrictive, so then that next generation is like hands off, but that's still trauma being passed because
right,
it's like because of how I felt because of my parents, and now I'm very hands off.
right,
But then now the child who needs you to be hands on in some ways now are doing things, and then like so now it's flip flops. So it continues to go in this pattern because the way we try to survive sometimes is like going the opposite extreme because I don't want to experience none of this.
exactly,
Instead of just healing to be able to show up and be able to get that balance. So when you're passing it on to your children, you're able to give them their nurture and care that they need at the same way as the like discipline, and like balance that out as they go forward and have the true healing that you want to be free versus running away or avoiding things.
most
And a lot of the
definitely,
times you don't, and I can't say everybody does it intentionally, they run away to avoid. It's just like, oh no, that's the thing. And I have people be like, I didn't even realize that where that came
right. Yeah, I didn't realize I was even doing that. Right. Any final words that you want to maybe drive home for our audience?
from. I guess it would just be taking the time to focus on like what is best for you in this season in life and finding the support to help make that happen for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So remember, you can change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing on your overall well being. So until next time, continue working on being the best you possible. Bye.